Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Big Akar Ahmed, and welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I've been seeing quite a bit online, and that is a little quote that people like using that Palestine was never a country, Palestine never existed, there's no such thing as Palestine. And this is something that I find very, 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 very distasteful because when we go and we read the Jewish sourcing and we go and we read the political sourcing and we go back to World War II and we go back to pre-World War One, we very clearly see that Palestine existed and that world leaders and documentations and trade routes and all types of things ran through this area of Palestine, going all the way back 4,000, 5,000 BC in the Old Testament. So I find this very, very, very interesting that people have this claim that Palestine never existed, right? And that it's always been the Jewish people's land, which I find very interesting. I understand that in the Old Testament that God had made covenants with Abraham and Abraham's children, and this was a covenant for the Jewish people, right? Now, Abraham also had another son, which I also find very, very interesting, that the Jewish lineage that come from Isaac just deny Ismail altogether. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump right into this, and I want to just address things like this. No such place as Palestine never was. This is something that I see way too much, way, way, way too much, and I'm sick of it. I'm quite literally sick of it. So let's pull up the Balfour Declaration. This is a letter to dear Lord Rothschild. Rothschild had sent a letter to the British Parliament asking to establish a Jewish state in the land of modern day Palestine. So if Palestine didn't exist, this letter would have never even been written to begin with. So let's go ahead and just read the letter. It's from the Foreign Office of the British Parliament, November 2nd, 1917. This is before World War II commenced. This is 30 years before Israel became a state. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you. Let me see if I can move this. I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty Government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use the best endeavors to facilitate the achievements of this object, to being clearly understood that nothing shall be done that may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights of the political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. So, as you can see, it says Palestine under non-Jewish communities in Palestine, and it says Palestine quite literally up here. Establishment in Palestine of the national home for the Jewish people. So, right there, the British Parliament and Lord Rothschild, one of the biggest Zionists to ever exist, have very, very clearly stated multiple times in their documentations trying to establish the state of Israel in Palestine that Palestine is a country, indeed. And if you go back during these times, you will also see very, very many other world leaders associating these lands as Palestine. There was leaders there, there were people there, okay? Now, to say that these people just fell from the sky and they are new, they just became there after so many years. What happened to the Jewish people after King David and King Solomon were ruling in Palestine? What happened to the Jewish people? Why did they leave? Why did they go establish governments in Europe? And why did they go establish governments in North America? Were they somehow taken as captured slaves like the Africans that were taken to North America and that's how they ended up there? Or did they fund these things? Do they own the banking systems and the transportation systems like Lord Rothschild here, who owns the world banks? or Mr. Rockefeller, who owns the world's transportation systems. And if you want to get really into it, my family roots go back to these families as well. So this is not something that I'm just talking, but it's not a conspiracy theory. We know who Lord Rothschild is. We know who Lord Rockefeller is by their majesty and by the majesty of the British Parliament, and we know how this works together. This is not a conspiracy theory, and there's nothing wrong about really talking about this. I'm not attacking them in any way. There's certain people that God placed in certain positions. Lord Rothschild and Rockefeller were placed in those positions by God Almighty. And that is their test. That's these families' test to see what they'll do with this power. Now, I'm not understanding why modern day Jewish people don't believe that Palestinians have been residing there for hundreds, thousands of years, just like they have. And even to the point that they have been established in that land before they were established in that land, or just as long as they were established in that land. What doesn't make any sense to me is that this is a land for the Jewish people, right? For the children of Abraham. God promised Abraham that land, okay? Abraham that land. And Abraham prayed for his son for 80 years. And Abraham got Ismail. And Ismail is the firstborn prophet child of Abraham. What I find very distasteful is how the Jewish scripture, the Torah, has completely removed Ismail from the whole entire narrative. Do you really think the father, the grandfather of monotheism, Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him, my grandfather, from the Ismail side, do you really believe that God made covenants with Abraham and gave him a son, and then you guys just toss him away? Ismail is so important, and Ismail also falls under the covenants of Abraham. He is a prophet. The children, the tribes of Ismail, have been there since Abraham. Just as the tribes of Isaac and Israel, or Jacob, peace and blessings be upon them, have been there since the beginning. So I'm not quite really understanding here, like, oh, the Jewish people were always there. They were there first. Well, you do know Ismail was born before the Jewish lineage ever even got started. That the Arabs were the first tribes of Abraham before Isaac. So I'm not quite understanding why you feel the superiority over the land. Where do you want the Arabs to go? Where do you want the firstborn tribes of Abraham to go? Do you want them to go to Asia? Do you want them to go to North America? No, they've been there since the beginning of time. We're actually the only tribes, the Arabs are the only people who haven't left the Middle East. Where the Jewish people had migrated to Europe and migrated to North America and built industries like the banking systems and the transportation systems. And then in 1917, they wanted to come back. In 1917, they wanted to just come back and take the land back over and displace the people who were currently there? Those Arabs have been there just as long as the Jewish people. And I find it very distasteful, to say the least, that you say it isn't. And I'm going to pull up my video right now, a short that I made from a little bit ago talking about this, right? And people can debunk it all they want, but it's right in the Old Testament. Exodus 17. When the Pharaoh let the people go, God did not let them on the road through the Palestine country. What does that say? The Philistine country. Who is the Philistines? Palestine? That's modern day word for Palestine. Do you think that Palestinians call themselves Palestinians? No, they call themselves Philistine. Philistini. Palestinian. Habibi. So this is the word for Palestine. Is Philistine. It says, rode through the Philistine country. Though it was shorter, for God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So what did God tell them to do? Don't go directly east, because if you go directly east from where the pyramids are, from where you guys were slaves to the Pharaoh, if you go directly east trying to go into the Middle Eastern area, you'll run through the Philistine country. Okay, right? Let's pull up the map. Let's pull up the map. Right? The Exodus from Egypt, right? This is the map, right? Let's zoom in. So, where did they start? They start right here. Hit home. God told them, don't go directly east because you'll end up in Palestine, bro. Gaza. You'll end up in this whole entire area, the land of Canaan, and all of this stuff going on over here, right? This is where you'll end up. Don't go directly east, because if you go directly east, you'll end up fighting these people. So I want you to flank south and then go across the sea. This is when Moses split the sea. And then from here, the Jewish people flanked back north, up from this side, and they came up through this area, okay? So Palestine has always been here. It's been here since 5000 BC. It's been called Philistia for a very, 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 very long sea. A long time, not a long sea. And this is Gaza. Gaza is literally an ancient city. And you guys are bombing it right now. So this is very, very distasteful to me. To sit here and pretend Palestine doesn't exist. Okay, the people who were there, they were the Canaanites. They weren't. Listen, Moses came, 2,000 years after Abraham was Moses? Less? Somewhere around 2,000 years. I may be wrong, but I think 2,000 years after Abraham. Which means for 2,000 years, Abraham had a child named Ismail and Isaac. And they bred, and they bred, and they bred, and they bred, and they had babies and babies and babies and babies and babies and babies and created tribes and civilizations. To just pretend that the millions and millions and millions and millions upon millions of people who came from the line of Ismail just don't exist in the land and weren't there from the beginning of this monotheistic religion and sprout from Prophet Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him, is so asinine, is so mind-boggling. I don't even understand, how, guys? How are you just going to deny the millions and millions and millions of people who came from Prophet Ismail, the firstborn prophet child of Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him? As Muslims, as Arabs, we don't just deny the whole entire line of Isaac because we're from Ismail. That's sickening. Quite literally dumb. So, to say that there was no Ismailis here, that the Arabs did not belong over in this land, while the Jewish people became slaves over here. First of all, how did Jewish people even get over here? How did Jewish people get in Europe? How did the Jewish people get in North America? How did they end up becoming the Rothschilds and owning the world banks? How did they end up becoming the Rockefellers and owning the world's transportation systems? Migration. But it's funny that when the Ismailites, the Arabs, are still stuck in the same land right here in the Middle East, that, they don't belong there. They were never there. Palestine was never a country. The Arabs were never there. They migrated there. That's a very, very distasteful thing to say. And you can reach as much as you want to reach, and you can try as much as you want to try. But there are millions and millions and millions of Arabs who know their lineage and know exactly where they come from. And the firstborn son of Abraham is Ismail. Remember the name and know his lineage. Thank you guys for coming in today. God bless you all, and free Palestine, baby. Bye-bye.